Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Reach podcast. This episode, we're going to be continuing it from our last episode, talking about arriving on college campus and surviving. Where we left off, we established a home base. We talked about how do we do that? How do we navigate maybe a roommate? So if you want to check out that episode, the link will be in the description.
We're in college. We're on campus. We're living the college life. So now
Yep.
what?
So that means we're what, eating, sleeping, going to parties?
Hopefully, hopefully.
I'm kidding.
I'm kidding
What
too. I'm
parties?
kidding too. Right, exactly. What parties? What parties, Us partying? No.
No, no, too much noise. Granted, if you're one of those autistics or neurodivergents who love socializing and get energized by it and love all that loud noise, you might be there. I wasn't. College, you're there to learn, you're there to network, you're there to hopefully get a piece of paper that says you graduated. Statistics as of 2020 put autistic students at about 41% graduation rate, which is actually about 20% lower than all other students.
Wow. That's crazy to even think about, in terms of how low the graduation rate is. What's happening? Why is this happening?
That's the big question, and not a lot of studies has been done yet regarding this, and it's good to talk about. In my experiences, some professors are completely unaware of what to do when they have a student who has a neurodivergence that doesn't agree with how they teach.
Yeah, the style of teaching may be something that is just um not agreeable in terms of like how to actually pick up on the skill, how to actually pick up on what you're teaching. I could definitely see that as well, and that can ultimately affect the person's mental health. And mental health is definitely a reason why I've personally seen people drop out from college because things can get so bad, grades might slip, home life you mentioned might get worse. Um, just things in their everyday life could get worse, and it just ends up snowballing to the point of I need to get out of here. I can't do this anymore. I've seen that happen before too.
Yeah. Some saving graces, with the exception of some professors who, despite me telling them what they were doing was like overstimulating me, that was a fun situation. I found out I was overstimulated by charcoal, drawing charcoal, and then I told the teacher about that, got an accommodation so I can use color pencil instead, which was great. It was a good adjustment by a conversation between the teacher, disability, and I, which could get to that in a second. But then decided to tell the entire classroom to shade all their papers with charcoal all around me. Like, we just had a conversation, and yet you go and do this.
Yeah, that's
It's
disappointing.
it's a lack of understanding of what overstimulation means. I would argue. I still got through the class with those adjustments, and to get those adjustments, it was literally a realization of what, because I was still new to what overstimulation was and what I was feeling, having that experience, and then checking in with disability and going, hey, I'm experiencing this, or actually, no, what I phrased it was, what are the symptoms of overstimulation? I got sent them, agreed with it. Then, okay, we need to have a talk with the teacher about this. And then coming up with just what would be a acceptable medium for me to use that I could use without having this problem. So it was a conversation. But when it came to my acting degree, I had professors that literally went, I have never seen this before in my life. And
Wow. My face, just for reference, everybody, my face is shocked.
yeah, so I'm alexithymic, which is common for those on the spectrum. It's also common for the general population too, more so for those with PTSD as well. And I think it's like 13 to 16% of the general population has this. It's a more of a I would describe it as a disconnect in the brain between myself and my emotional states. And if I'm recognizing my emotional state, it means it's gotten to like at least a level 7. Before that, my brain will usually not see it. So when you're told to, follow your emotions, follow impulse when it comes to drawing or when it comes to acting, it's not helpful because my I tend to be more in the moment, what I observe, what I see. So this is where like have fell in love with improv because it is literally what you see and observe and responding to it. I had a few professors that went out of their way to go, okay, I've never seen this before. Can you explain it to me? And we had a conversation. My first professor was my improv professor who like saw my on my accommodation list uh, problems with figures of speech, which
Interesting.
that's the one who literally said, I've never seen this before. So I'm like, okay, let's have a conversation about autism.
At least they were willing to have that
Oh,
conversation.
yes. Like the fact that he was willing to have the conversation and listen made him one of the greatest influences there. I was just like, please, I want more of you. I
I
ended
can
up taking 3 of
understand
his classes.
Wow. That's awesome. That's awesome. And it's so interesting because like for me, I had a relatively opposite experience, but I think for me it was just I didn't really feel like I needed specific accommodations because I was going into my major and I knew that I was able to handle a lot of the things that were thrown in my direction within my major. Even when I was feeling overstimulated, for me it was like I didn't care. I could just do it. And I think that just comes from like being able to mask so well. As we've mentioned in previous episodes about, masking and autism, I'm able to put on a front and be able to say, okay, I can handle this. I can do this. Like I can I can absolutely, work through that. So that for me, like I had an opposite experience in the effect of in the effect of just like being able to handle things that were thrown in my direction, you know?
Yeah, I can get like masking through something if you can kind of at least understand how it's working. Yeah, for
Hmm.
me, I had the problem of I can't even grasp how this is working right now because I don't speak this language.
You're telling me you're speaking English, but really it just feels like you're speaking a whole like Japanese or Mandarin Chinese. It's like,
Yeah,
I don't
the wonderful thing though about my last 2 schools is I have had my diagnosis, so I came in going, okay, now that I know I am an Aspie or I'm on the spectrum, I can tell you, and how can you help me? How can you support me? And that was one of my initial conversations into the school. It was literally one of the intake appointments I had was talking with neurodiversity and going, hi, what's this entail? And the conversation there was literally a lengthy of, okay, let's go through the different things we generally offer. And do you think this would help you? This would help you. Have you had problems with this? Okay, well, I could recommend this. Later on, when it came to the charcoal thing, it came to be something very specific. And that's something for generally the student to be aware of is things that might not be in a general list, like getting extra time for a test or going testing in a quiet location, things like that, which are really wonderful to help you succeed. But something as specific as a charcoal is going to be to the student. So not everybody's going to have that specific accommodation.
Absolutely, absolutely. We all might have different um and individualized needs, depending on the class we're in, depending on the coursework that we're looking at, depending on just the environment in general. It's so interesting, actually. I was just thinking about this. I actually took journalism ethics twice in college. I failed the first time because each of the exams and the quizzes were very, very difficult and the content was very confusing. But the second time I was on my way to failing that class. And I realized in that class specifically, I don't know why it was that class specifically, because all my other classes I could handle doing the computer lab tests. For us, we had computer lab testing. We would just go in, we'd make an appointment. But for some reason with ethics, don't know why, but I couldn't do the computer lab testing. I would have really bad anxiety attacks over it. And even though I didn't have like a disability accommodation, I didn't necessarily like go to my disability um advisory board or anything over at my school. I think for some reason, just with that class, I was having a ton of anxiety about just taking the tests in the computer lab. And I think that does have to do with just the fact that I had failed the class once before. And so my professor at the time was actually very open and was willing to give me paper tests so that way I could feel a lot more at ease. And again, like the change in modality for me, the change from, computer test to a paper test, it did make a world of difference. And so going into like specific circumstances, it can be specific circumstances even depending on the actual course that you're taking as well.
You're in college, so you could be studying so many different things. My last school even had I think, a minor in shoe design. Yeah, so that is going to be one of the tools in your arsenal is having those adjustments and having conversations with your professors. Because we haven't gotten to this yet, but when it comes to when you're first getting there in your first weeks of school, the first thing you absolutely, and I repeat, absolutely need to look at is your course syllabus.
Yeah.
The course syllabus is going to have all that wonderful relevant information depending on the school, very categorized, I hope. And you'll find in it ways to reach your professor, office hours that they are available outside of their class times, and if those office hours do not work with you, you can still reach out to a professor and ask if there are any other times because everybody's class schedules are going to vary and more often than not, in my experience, will conflict with those office hours. I am honest. Like in the several schools I've been to, they have never worked. Almost never.
Yeah. Fair enough, fair enough. I've definitely ran into the same thing. And also too, one thing that I also really learned from being in college is also if your professors have teachers assistants that are willing to offer, office hours or tutoring sessions, that has been something that has actually helped me before as well. I had a few classes that had TAs, and I had one, the reason why I remember like one of the main ones was because I actually needed some tutoring in that specific course. So, so that's why I personally remembered it, and it was an astronomy course, funny enough. So,
Yeah. In my last school, I actually was a tutor.
hmm,
So, um, like, there was a separate department that would hire students for tutoring, and they would have tutors for specific majors. If you've gone through certain classes, you would have to prove that you're qualified enough to do so. And I ended up working mostly with the neurodiverse students of the school because what they decided to form was their own cohort for the first time. So they actually had an incoming small group of students that went through all the same classes together, had all the same homework together, so they got all the same help together, which was great. So I got
that's
to
really
work with
cool.
tutoring them, um, which is a great transition from high school because you in high school sometimes you'll have the same group going through all the same classes as well, having all the same homework. So it's a great way to do it, and they stay together through their foundation classes, and then after that, once they start hitting their major classes, they all go off their separate ways.
It's really interesting to hear that too, and you know, really cool that you had that opportunity too, because you never know, like you see this cohort, all together and they're going through the same thing. They all need a little bit of assistance, a little bit of help, to be able to have that community, I think it's just huge. And just even like navigating, and this is going into something completely different, but navigating friendships and social skills in college is just a whole other thing in of itself. So having that small community be together is just so invaluable, you
Yeah,
know?
it was a great idea that they came up with and implemented, and also made wonderful for me because then I could just hop from person to person. Okay, what are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? Are you doing what you need to do? And they helped with a little bit of executive functioning, which is one thing that I tutored in, which if your school does it, find it might be called time management, executive functioning. But if you definitely need help with that, take up that offer and utilize that ability. So a lot of students that went to executive functioning usually went there for a quiet space to work or to have someone sit in front of them so they can just go, okay, I'm going to focus because you're here. I'm not kidding. I had a few students that like where they just needed me there to get some of their work done.
Oh my gosh.
I didn't mind it. It was just like, okay, I'm here if you need help organizing or getting like breaking down your syllabus, because that's another thing. You're going to have your assignments will be usually listed in your syllabus or on some digital platform. And I've seen various ones that worked to different degrees. But if you have any questions about that, you always reach out to your professor or a tutor, classmates. But yeah, the idea is you're going to have to go through your syllabus, find those assignments, break them down, make sure you get the due dates, how far you want to be in the assignment by a certain time. I've had like an art history class where we had upwards of almost 200 pages a week of reading to do. Because I looked at the syllabus ahead of time, I made sure I got that reading done way beforehand.
Those are some really great tips, and I think another really great tip like that I learned a lot is or I really like had for myself throughout college is just making sure that I had like an agenda or some sort of like calendar system, you know, for me.
I highly recommend if you can get a whiteboard calendar and just go, okay, these are the days, and okay, important dates of due dates are going to be in red sticky notes
Yes.
or yellow sticky notes, whatever color you happen to use, and just utilize tactile.
I'm the same way. I also really love the like the Google calendars for that reason. I love having an electronic calendar because I can set reminders. And so I can put like if I need a reminder about this due date, I can remind myself 2 weeks before, 1 week before, the day before, you know. So it's really, really effective. All in all, like I think it's that much more important to be able to kind of see how, when it comes to navigating college and when it comes to just getting your footing and everything, making sure to have those conversations, reviewing syllabi, getting a good system for yourself. I feel like with that, that can really contribute to more success in college. At least that's what my experience has been. I can't speak for everybody, but from my experience, that's what I have found to be the most successful.
Yeah, utilize those supports, have conversations. Uh, a lot of colleges will do check-ins, mandatory check-ins with your professors, usually around midterm or just before finals or both,
Hmm.
just to make sure you're on track. And key part of your syllabus to always, and I always look at short of, the class materials you're going to need for the class and the books you're going to need, because those will also be listed on the syllabus. So make sure you get those before you start class. Is the actual uh, grading policy, like what assignments are worth what percentage of your grade. At the end of the day, the main thing you want to do is you want to make sure you retain as many of your points as possible so you pass the class.
Exactly. Exactly. That's why you got to have a good system in place.
Use those supports.
Absolutely.